What's up, YouTube? Today in this video, I'm going to show you how to do a iPhone 12 mini charging port replacement. I'm going to walk you through step by step. I'm going to narrate the whole thing. So you ideally should be able to do this yourself, or you will look at this and say, hell no. If you want and you'd rather me do it, I would be happy to. My contact info, my email, email me. Yeah, I'll get back at you. So let's start out. This is your charging port. So in Apple's infinite wisdom, they made this into a board out repair. And I've already started this video on another device, and I was attempting to do it the same way I would do a 12 or a 12 Pro Max, which is where you can sort of lift up on the board and then pull this flex out, and that's just not in the cards here. At least in those models, you can remove the SIM tray, and getting access to it is quite a bit easier, but on this one, not so much. So yeah, that basically leaves us with removing the board. If somebody knows a way that I'm just not seeing, you know, leave a comment, and I'd be happy to make another video showing how after, you know, doing it myself. But yeah, so obviously you need to remove the screen, you need to remove the battery, and then you need to remove the rear camera, front camera assembly, obviously the board, and then finally you get the chance to then remove all of these other components, which really in the grand scheme of things is not that much compared to what you just removed. If you want to do all of that, continue watching. So starting with the 12s, Apple improved the strength of the perimeter gasket, which, you know, aids in making the phone water resistant. They're considerably stronger to remove the screen. I've already made a video about how to do that, and it goes quite a bit more in detail. So I'm going to leave a link right about here. But the general idea is you use a magic glass, because you'll notice how much wider it is than the iSesamo. You use heat. I don't use heat in this case, but you can use heat. I'd suggest it. And then you use an iSesamo along the sides, but just to get it started. That's what the magic glass is for, because it just disperses the pressure, you know, on a much wider area, so you're less likely to damage the OLED, which I've done on more than one occasion. The screen on this, you know, just rock it back and forth. I made it look easy there. Next, we need to remove both our ear speaker flex and our screen flex. But before we do that, you want to disconnect the battery. This is really, really, really important. Just because your battery is, just because the device is off, there is still electricity running through the board, and the last thing you want to do is, you know, accidentally short something out. So disconnect your battery. So to make it easier to get to the battery pull tabs, we pull out the loudspeaker, and then just like with the screen, your best friend is going to be 91 or 99% rubbing alcohol. As you can see, the technique I have here is I like to get it started with the tweezers. So we'll sort of grab, roll a little bit, almost like I don't know, spaghetti is what I think of, and then I use a couple of drops, and then it takes the bite out of the adhesive, makes it so much easier and less likely to have torn tabs. The top is a little bit more difficult, and I think I actually tear one here. So if that does happen, you'll see what I'm about to do in just a sec, but I'm going to put another video on what happens or what to do if your battery pull tabs tear. So in this case, the bottom two I was able to get out. So I come in with a wedge. You don't want to wedge it up too much, but really it's just a matter of putting some isopropyl alcohol, that wedge, and then rock it back and forth, and it comes right out. So you can do this in whatever order you feel. The board's got to come out, as well as the cameras. So I'm doing the front camera first. So I started doing this out of order. But yeah, you need to first remove the rear camera retaining plate, which has 2 Phillips screws. You'll see me do this in just a sec. And then remove the camera, and then only then can you remove the front camera assembly. So depending on how long this repair will take you, it's not a bad idea to stick your cameras in these little plastic bags. So there are a couple of screws and or plates, standoff, standoff, standoff. And then as well as there's a tri-wing right here. Before we remove this last one, we need to remove the SIM tray. There's also a little pin which is right here. So I'm bending these out of the way. It just makes it easier when you go to finally remove your board. Last but not least, our 5G antenna. Now there's also some adhesive right along here. So I felt like I was stuck on something, but apparently I wasn't. So obviously here is our board. You can set that aside. Like I said, yay! Now we can finally get to the charging port. And let's see. It appears that most of these are Phillips, which is nice. On some models, they're just constantly switching in between Phillips and tri-wing. So there are a couple of screws on the side of each, like here, here. Now, there's a little, I'll show you in just a sec. But you'll see that there's a little, I don't know, hoop, whatever you want to call this, that has to clear, and it's sort of down in this area. But usually what you do is just press down, wiggle back and forth, and then just pull up at a 90-degree angle, and that'll come right out. Next we have Phillips, and then a couple of standoff. And there we go. Our microphone down here is connected with just a little bit of adhesive. There's a little bit of foam, but I'll show you how to get that off in just a sec. So there's also some adhesive here. Use your heat gun or heat mat or hair dryer. There's also a little bit of adhesive in this corner. I almost forgot. Whoops. And look at that, it comes right out. Okay, so there is still a little bit of foam connecting this little plastic piece that the microphones sit in. But once again, same with that little other bracket that I just mentioned. If you pull up and away, it's pretty easy to remove. Often you're left with some foam around this area. So if that's there, take the time to clean it up. Take your, I'm just going to be reapplying this. Usually if you have a flex, sometimes it's kind of a pain because you have to get all these little bits and pieces folded in just the right way. But usually once you get the charging port seated, it's a little bit easier to get everything else. I will mention that most charging ports are probably not going to come with this plastic bracket. So it's just a matter of popping this piece right here out and then transferring this little plastic boot, whatever you want to call it, over. Okay, so those are only lightly connected. So I always like to connect my charging port now compared to when all your parts are back in the phone. Because if something is wrong then, it's a whole lot of work to get back here. So once I know that it's seated properly, I will then give them a whatever quarter, half turn. So I have a tendency, especially on longer repairs, to just go off into the weeds, and I don't know. Let me know. Do I go too much into detail? Do I not go into detail enough? Should I go into detail just during the reassembly process, or should I put just as much into the disassembly? Let me know, just as a general, which you prefer. You know, I make these videos for you guys. I mean, I want to, I know this sounds cliche, but I want to bring repair to, you know, remove the barrier of entry as it is. So if you can let me know in the comments, that would greatly help me out. Thank you so much. So remember, this little hoop right here, sort of go down and then to the left. I hold it in place with my thumb. And then that's it. I might be doing this out of order. All right. So next, we're going to be dropping our board back in. Sometimes it helps to just, once again, fold these flexes back. And even sometimes more than you might think. They have a little bit of wiggle room. So now that we're here, let me see this. There we go. You should be able to wiggle it back and forth. Sometimes this will help. All right. So coming up, we just gonna reconnect all of our flexes. If you aren't sure about if it doesn't feel right, generally don't just, you know, sort of jam it in place, as you can damage either the flex or the connector. Ask me how I know. Really, it's one of those things that you just have. It's more feel than it is sight, but it should just feel right. I know that doesn't really, I don't know, might not help, but that's kind of the way it is. So you may have noticed, but these things right here have a tendency to come out. Sometimes they'll get stuck. They are magnetic, so they'll get stuck to your MagSafe magnets. And there's another one that goes on the right.
Then take this bracket.
So there's that. Now, I like to just connect our flex first. So if your SIM slot, if your SIM tray doesn't just slot right in, the likelihood is that your board is just, it's sitting up too high or too low. Just make sure there's not something jammed under there, or make sure that it's not, like, I don't know, sitting up at a weird angle, because that'll just make things real ugly when you go to connect your screen. So this little prong up here, you'll notice there's a little black majigger, goes right in there. I can already see a problem. You might as well. There's a little speck of dust or whatever debris. I was able to get rid of it. Sometimes you actually need to go in with like a Q-tip. Now there are little tabs here and here that need to come in at an angle. There's that. So you can pretty much use any double-sided tape that you want, but it's not a bad idea to get these pull tab type, because if you ever need to open the phone again, obviously it's considerably easier to do it this way as opposed to having to heat up the phone and, you know, pry out the battery. I've seen some horror stories, and even ones that have come out of repair shops. So, but as you can see right here, it's just a matter of lining it. It's also not a bad idea to get an extra one of these in case you misinstall it the first time. So my technique with batteries is you want to, you don't want to just lay the battery in. On more than one occasion, I have done that, and then the flex cable doesn't have proper travel, up, down, left, right, whatever. So the technique that I have is connect it, so then we know no matter where I place this battery, this flex cable will have proper reach, and lay it down. Apply some pressure. Now, I'm going to mention this now, but I'll also mention it before I connect my screen, which will be in not that long. Disconnect your battery. Just because your device is off, there is still electricity running through the board as long as your battery is connected. So this won't make the phone water resistant again, but it certainly will keep dust out of the device and also the Face ID area. And it'll also keep the screen from tapping up against the frame, which can get really annoying really quick. You want to make sure to use an isopropyl rubbing alcohol pad just to make sure that when you're putting a new gasket on, it has a clean mating surface. So just like battery adhesives, it's not a bad idea to get another one of these. If you can, finding them in 3 layer is the ideal. I think this one is a 3 layer. I'll show you what that means in just a sec, but this was the first layer. The second layer stays on and helps us align, which you can start at the top. I start at the bottom, and then you just want to, it took me a while before I got halfway decent at these. So this is the second layer. So the third layer is still covering the actual adhesive, which is nice because we can pull that off at the last second. But here we go. So we're going to, once again, make sure our battery is disconnected. On some of the wider flexes, I use a technique where I don't press dead center. I press right to left or left to right, as it helps avoid bowing the flex cable, especially one that is as expensive as this one, because if the flex is damaged, then your screen is damaged. Connect our battery. So there are these little brackets. I don't know if you can see them, but they're right here and right here. And that's what these two little hooks clip into. So now's the time to remove our perimeter gasket. I'm also going to mention it's not, or it's a good idea to check and make sure that we don't have any screws stuck to any place in the phone where they're not supposed to be. The usual culprits are the perimeter gasket. So if you didn't replace your perimeter gasket, just make sure there aren't any screws that are stuck to it. Also the loudspeaker and Taptic engine, and then also the ear speaker, just because they have some magnets in them, so screws tend to get stuck. On more than one occasion, I have damaged a screen because I was impatient. So we seat the phone. You see that it's flush. Crunch, crunch. Thank you for watching.